While the resume merely states facts about you, the cover letter lets you tell the full story of why you're the ideal candidate for the job. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to write the best cover letter possible to maximize your chances of getting to the next stage in the application process. And stick around until the end for a pro tip on cover letters you've probably never heard before. So let's get into it. So starting off with the cover letter structure, and it's generally structured in the following way. Firstly, you're going to have the header where you're going to have your contact details as well as those of your recruiter. Followed by that, you're going to have the opening or the introductory paragraph. Then you're going to have why this position or why this particular company, where you basically state your motivations. After which you're going to explain why you're the ideal candidate. Sometimes these two paragraphs can be flipped depending on how strong you think that's going to make the cover letter. And then towards the end, you're going to have the closing in which you thank them for their time and you reinforce your interest for that particular position. Using the structure should get you around 1 page in length for the cover letter. Anything longer than that is not recommended. It is fine though if you have some white spaces within that 1 page. Also, for most corporate roles, it's not recommended to have any images or fancy colors. Instead, it's a safe bet to just stick to a dark color and split them into a few paragraphs so it's easier to read. Now that we know the structure, let's get into the details of each section. Starting off with the header section, and this is fairly straightforward. On the one hand, you're going to have the recruiter's information, and on the other hand, you're going to have your own contact details. And make sure you keep this appropriate, especially with the email if you haven't bothered to change it since you were, say, 13 years old. And yes, I used to like Dragon Ball then. And at this point, you might be wondering, what if I don't know the recruiter's info? Don't worry too much about that. I personally applied many times without having their contact information, and yet I still managed to move on to the next stage in the application process. Overall, there's really two main solutions to this. Number one is just to have the name of the company and their address instead of actually having the recruiter's contact details. And the other one is just to delete that section, so just have your own contact information instead. Overall, when you greet them, you can start with Dear Sir or Madam, or to whom it may concern if you don't have their details. Obviously, if you have the information, make sure you put it, as it's better than not doing so. Next up, we have the first big section, which is the intro or the opening. Here, you want to explain a bit about who you are. Maybe you're a third-year student at Harvard University studying economics, or maybe you're a full-time employee at Google, say in their engineering department. Then you want to express your interest in whatever particular position that you're applying to, and make sure you state it clearly. Some people like to have a hook in the first paragraph of the cover letter, basically to grab the attention of the recruiter. Usually this is something like an accomplishment, some recent news that the company has been involved in, or what's probably most common, which is a mutual connection. For example, this can be as simple as after attending a career fair at Harvard University, I had the chance to speak with Bill Smith, a management consultant at McKinsey, and I was very impressed to hear about the company's unique culture, specifically ... Now this person demonstrates that they've done their homework. They went out of their way to go to a career fair and try to meet with some McKinsey reps, and they even managed to talk with a management consultant in Bill Smith. Also, now the recruiter is intrigued to know what they mean by the unique company culture at McKinsey. Overall, if you can use a hook, that's great, but it's not going to damage your cover letter if you don't have one either. Next up, we have why this company / this position. So here you want to explain what motivates you to apply for this particular role at this company. And it's often very useful to read through the company's about page to see what they're all about, and at the same time go through their job description. For example, if we were applying to a role at McKinsey as a business analyst, we could look through their job description, and here we can discover that the company really places a big emphasis on developing their employees. As you can see, they provide training, mentoring, and leadership opportunities, among many other things. So to answer the why this company part, we could mention in a paragraph something like, I'm attracted to McKinsey as junior employees receive training, mentoring, and substantial responsibilities to continue growing in their career at their company. And then for why this particular position, you can look at some of the bullets that describe what you'll be doing. So here it seems like it's going to be problem solving, working with teams, and presenting effectively. So you could say something along the lines of, the business analyst role is particularly appealing to me for a challenge of solving complex problems, collaborating as a team, and communicating our findings effectively to senior management. As a bonus, you can mention specific news articles that the company you're applying to has been involved in. This is quite common in law or in banking, where they tend to be high-profile transactions, and so you can often read about them on the news as well. Next up, we have the why you're the ideal candidate section, and this is your sales pitch basically. You want to highlight why you, this company, and this particular position are the perfect match. And again, it's helpful to look through the job description to see what the requirements are. So going back to the McKinsey business analyst role, you can find that they're looking for people that can break down and solve complex problems, specifically through quantitative analysis, and they should also be comfortable with ambiguous, ever-changing situations. With that in mind, you should be able to find relevant examples of you doing that in the past. For example, this could be, this past summer I interned at an NGO fighting poverty, where I was involved in solving the complicated logistics of delivering perishable food to people in need across the city. I created an Excel model that predicted the departure and arrival times of food containers, allowing us to efficiently transport food to over 50,000 people, with savings worth around $10,000 a year. Now this example is made up, but it highlights that it was a complicated problem that was ever changing, and it required an analytical tool, in this case Excel, to try to solve it. And lastly, I tried to quantify wherever possible, just to make sure that the recruiter has enough context of how big it was. As you saw from this example, even though McKinsey is a management consulting firm, while the NGO is completely non-corporate, the way we presented it, it does look like there are quite a few transferable skills. While this example is for a job, it can also be for an extracurricular activity like a competition or as part of your coursework as well. One common mistake that I often find in this section is apologizing for a lack of experience. For example, I often see things like, although I have limited professional experience, I believe that my relevant courses in university provide the necessary knowledge to succeed in this position. Here, there's no need to mention that you have limited professional experience. After all, you're just highlighting your weakness when they haven't even asked for it. Instead, you can flip this around to something more positive, like I'm excited to apply the business theory I've learned at university in a more practical environment, such as this business analyst position. Now it doesn't seem like you have a weakness, instead it just looks like you're excited to transfer some of your theory knowledge into more practical stuff. As for how many examples or paragraphs you should have in this section, there's really no clear guideline. As long as it makes your cover letter stronger and it doesn't surpass the 1-page mark, you should probably have it in there. Next up, we have the closing, and this has to do with two main things. Firstly, you want to reinforce your interest in the company, and secondly, you want to thank them for their time. So it can look something like this. For the first section, it can be, I'm confident that my background, education, and work experience will yield the right set of skills for the business analyst role at McKinsey. So it briefly summarizes the points you mentioned in the cover letter, and it clearly states what role you're interested in particular, making it a full loop all the way from the intro. Then for the second part, this doesn't really have much to it. It can be something like, thank you very much for your time and consideration in reviewing my application. And the big elephant in the room, should you update your cover letter for each application that you send? I personally recommend having a few different templates depending on the industry that you're interested in. So for example, if you're a business student, you could be interested in finance, accounting, and consulting. And so you'd have 3 different templates. After all, a consulting job and an accounting job are probably going to have some significant differences. On the other hand, if you're applying to a consulting job at EY or a consulting job at KPMG, they're probably going to be somewhat similar. And so it makes sense to use that same template for that. And here's 2 additional resources you might find helpful. The first one has to do with a free cover letter template that I've linked in the description, and make sure you hit that like and that subscribe along the way. And secondly, it has to do with, specifically for students, it's a career center at your university. I personally studied at Cornell, and this is what their career center looked like. Basically says to come see us for help with your career exploration, cover letter, and so on. After all, when you think about it from their point of view, if their students are going to the best companies in the world, that's obviously reflects positively on them. And so it's in their interest to really try to help you out. Alright, so the pro tip that you've been waiting for. Once you have a cover letter storyline that you're happy with, you can recycle its content. For example, you can take a portion of your cover letter and put it onto a cold email. Similarly, when they ask you in an interview to tell me about yourself, you can use the cover letter introduction to answer that question. Or lastly, in your LinkedIn bio, you can also put it in there as your summary. So that's a pro tip. If you want to see my actual cover letter, you can check out this video over here. And if you want to see how to make a proper resume, check out this video over here. That's all for this one. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you liked it, and I'll catch you in the next one.